Slack so far. Rishi Jaluria, Senior Vice President and Senior Research Analyst at D.A. Davidson. Rishi, thanks for joining us. So a slowing top line and a widening bottom line loss. That doesn't bode well, does it?
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here. Look, I think that's, as I talked to investors yesterday after the numbers came out, I think that's the concern is the deceleration on the top line, especially if you look at forward guidance. I mean, you're talking about going from 80% type growth last year to 67% growth to, if you impute the guidance, 40% growth in the back half of the year. And I think there's a little bit of concerns around that. I'll caveat that by saying, they're a recent or they're soon to be a brand new listing. And the MO for a lot of these software companies is to guide very conservatively so they can get into a comfortable beat and raise cadence. So the actual numbers may prove to be very, very different from the ones that they're talking about right now. In terms of the bottom line, I will say actually that was probably one of the silver linings from my perspective is on the cash flow side. Cash flow actually came in above my expectations, once you strip out the one-time charges related to the direct listing. And I do think, especially if you think about the back half of the year and into next year, we can start to see some real levers on the cash flow side and see them start to approach free cash flow break even or even positive next year.
A lot of people point to the fact that they get such a huge proportion of their revenue from a very small percentage of clients. Is that something that you see as a risk or an opportunity showing space to grow into?
Yeah, actually, I look at that stat that they gave around the 100K customers and the 40% plus revenue contribution as a really positive thing in my mind, because I think there was a little bit of this narrative of Slack being the startup tool, but really the fact that you have these large customers that are such a big part of their revenue base tells us that you have a lot of these businesses that are using Slack enterprise-wide, that you have these wall-to-wall deployments, that it's not something that just the IT teams or software developers within the organizations are using. It's something that marketing and finance and legal, HR, PR, everyone is using. So I actually look at that as a good thing. But I think to your point, it is really important for future growth, and I think that's probably where the biggest opportunity is to take that longer tail of customers outside of their largest ones and help them kind of graduate up to being, again, 100K plus customers. Really, I think that's where the biggest opportunity today is with them.
Direct listing, so the employees, the early investors, the likes of Andreessen Horowitz, they can sell on day one as opposed to a typical post-IPO lockup period. Does that concern you?
It's one of those things that's, I think, really difficult to predict, and really the only historical analog we have to look at for a company of any size, scale that's done a direct listing was Spotify last year. And if you look at day one trading, it was swinging wildly all over the place. I would not be surprised to see the same thing with Slack. I think there's a lot of appetite from institutional investors, but at the same time, you do have people who have worked there for a long time that are going to use the opportunity to take advantage of the liquidity. So I do think it is definitely one of the risks that anyone looking at the name has to be aware of, is that you don't have that lockup. You don't have a little bit of a propping up of the price like you might have with a traditional IPO.
So Rishi, sum it up for us. What's your recommendation?
Yeah, so I'm neutral rated on the stock. That is honestly entirely related to valuation. It's probably one of the most richly valued names within software. But I think the value proposition for Slack is clearly there. As I do my customer checks, I think I talked to probably 30 or more Slack customers. Not only is it ubiquitous, at the very least at tech and tech-forward companies, but it's something that people who use it seem to really, really like using. And there very much is that viral nature out of it. So I'm very, very positive on the company and the potential for Slack to be the next multi-billion-dollar SaaS company. Just the valuation's my sticking point for now, and why I'm neutral rated on the name.
Rishi Jaluria, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, Washington.